You know, you can learn a lot from technology these days. Internet can feed you information, video games can have moral messages, etc. Something I have found in a meeting of these two things, more specifically in Feminist Frequency's video Bayonetta and Advertising, that's the original unedited version, link in the description, is that there is a serious difference in most, if not all, people's definitions of what a power fantasy is. Now, before I get started, I want to say that regardless of whether Feminist Frequency's videos are right or wrong, it's completely unimportant to what I'm saying. So if you were looking to something to that effect, sorry. And if you dislike politics, groovy, because I'm not dirtying my hands with any of that business. I use her as an example because she speaks her mind unambiguously, and so when I talk about her opinion, I don't have to be worried about putting words in her mouth, since they're all right there. I'd like to turn focus back to my topic, though, and talk about a difference in opinion Feminist Frequency and I have. In her video on Bayonetta, Anita Sarkeesian labels it a male adolescent power fantasy, a stance I found interesting when I first heard it, because I honestly have the opposite opinion. It's all a matter of perspective, and ties somewhat into what I was saying in my previous video about writers being separate personalities from their characters. Only in this case, instead of the relationship being between writer and character, it's between player and character. I'll link to a PBS Idea Channel video in the description discussing this gulf between controller and avatar for anyone intrigued by the concept, but I want to make use of it, not discuss it, because I believe it's the reason why Miss Sarkeesian and I disagree. She believes the game casts you as a person controlling Bayonetta, while I believe the game does its best to cast you as Bayonetta herself. This is why Bayonetta never outright strips for you, why she only ever does things that Bayonetta would do, because they're trying to put you in her shoes as Bayonetta, doing Bayonetta things. Part of what grinds Miss Sarkeesian's gears is that the advertising and character designs are so sexualized, indicating that their target audience has to be males. The implication, then, is that developers made a game that lets males undress a woman, then created a world in which undressing her gives them superpowers, that is, her hair demon things. But look at it in a different light. Perhaps the developers wanted to advertise the power she gets rather than how she gets it. Yeah, it's from exposing her skin, but that's more a matter of the character than the people making her. It's important to note on that, by the way, that Bayonetta's character designer is actually a woman herself, and intended her to be beautiful and feminine rather than vulgar. Looking at Bayonetta as a power fantasy for males is examining it through the harshest possible lens, as any males who believe they can actually dominate Bayonetta are ignoring more than a few key aspects of the character. Clearly then, Miss Sarkeesian and I have different views of what a power fantasy is. In an effort towards fairness, and to better define the terms involved, I want to touch on a game that I believe to be a more accurate representation of a male power fantasy, and then one that will be a unisex power fantasy. It's important to note that being a power fantasy is not inherently a bad thing. In a way, most games are power fantasies, unintentionally or not. A game can be truly effective by giving the player power and then showing the consequences for how they use it, or especially fun by granting power and an unambiguously good goal for which to direct it towards. The game I believe is the best example for a power fantasy exclusive to males, though, would be The Last of Us. Now I know there will probably be a little bit of eye rolling at my choice in game. Talking bad about The Last of Us will generally get you labeled as a troll who can't stand popular games, but that's not the direction I want to go in at all, as what I'm saying isn't, strictly speaking, a criticism. What I'm going to be getting at is how The Last of Us fits my personal definition of a power fantasy that rewards masculinity, nothing more. I feel I should start by defining exactly what societal masculine traits are, or at least the ones that come into play in The Last of Us. Obviously, physical strength and primal cunning are a few, as those have been assigned to males since the hunter-gatherer days of proto-civilization. But on a deeper level, Last of Us ascribes elements of fatherhood, protective instinct, and warrior mentorism to the main character, Joel, who constantly embodies these things more than any other character. Perhaps there simply aren't enough characters to make judgment, but all of the male characters have similarities to the archetype the main character shapes. They all have someone to protect, or teach, or a home to keep safe, but the main character is the only one to succeed in all these things. The player is cast as the epitome of the universe's fatherhood-based morality. Now, like I said, power fantasies aren't a bad thing. Last of Us does put a barrier of effort between you and this end goal, and certainly doesn't give the main character any breaks as he gets stabbed, shot, bitten, and tossed around for his troubles. So it's not like it shows these masculine traits as being easy to embody, nor does it show them as being inherently good, as the main character certainly has some ambiguous morals. But still, I feel the label of male power fantasy fits, due to the father-daughter nature of the main character's relationship to his charge, Ellie, as it may alienate female viewers for being so in line with societal masculine definitions. This, combined with the fact that success is inevitable, being a video game and all, means that while the effort Joel puts forth is no small feat, the player's input is. This label doesn't condemn them, as their relationship doesn't damage the female viewer either. It just doesn't make any effort to include them in the emotional investment of Joel, which isn't a bad thing. Females can still enjoy it plenty. The point where a male power fantasy label becomes scathing would be a game like Leisure Suit Larry, or a worse example, the Fatal Tabletop Rule System. But I don't want to talk about those. They kinda suck. A step over from Last of Us, going from masculine to gender neutral, would be the totally underrated Warhammer 40,000 game, Space Marine. Like I said, Last of Us crafts a character with a lot of traits that society associates with masculinity, like physical combat prowess. Well, that same trait, like so many others, can be toned way the fuck up, to the point even where society wouldn't recognize it as an exclusively male trait, because at that point it has exceeded human limitations and completely separated itself from sexuality and gender stereotypes in general. That is the point Space Marine is at. I consider Bayonetta a female power fantasy because she is so expressly feminine in every way she exercises power. Last of Us is a male power fantasy because the main character is pretty much Fight Club's image of God, the invincible male protector you can only imagine becoming. Space Marine is neither male nor female though, because not only is the society and therefore norms and stereotypes completely alien to us, but because the gender of the main character is so immaterial. They have been stripped of a need or desire for sex by their situation, and would be regardless of gender. They lack the organs, the societal standards, and even so far as the concepts that might indicate whether they identify with or could be identified as male or female. In my opinion, this is the best way to tell a story that has nothing to do with romance, gender, race relations, or any other social issue. When I write, for instance, I try not to make any mention of gender, sexuality, or even race unless it has impact on the story, because I want my characters to be as divorced as possible from any expectations that could be levied by these factors. Moreover, as much as I like seeing writers take risks in making female homosexual or non-white characters, I have no obligation to explicitly represent these groups myself. What I'm saying is, my writing is not a platform to talk about social issues most of the time, and I'd like it if more people recognize that other writers probably feel the same way, barring the occasional Atlas Shrugged. I'll make characters like that when it benefits the character, like in the case of Bayonetta, and not when it benefits a social justice lobby, especially not just to validate the opinions of an audience. So keep an open mind when considering how these factors actually impact the game's gameplay, and don't be dissuaded just because it's yet another shooter starring a white male protagonist. That may just be the developer's approximation of gender or race neutral. Like, comment, and subscribe if you feel the same, and I see you all next time.